Good morning. It's time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And now your host, Mike Hewitt.
Hey, good morning, everybody. We've got a full studio this morning again. We've got Jim Riley riding shotgun, and we've got Matt Wiedenhoeft with the other show's shotgun. And we've even got Pax in the studio this morning. Good morning, Pax.
He's far away.
He's as shy as I am. And, of course, Brian Thomas is keeping us on track.
I'm trying.
You're doing the best you can. That's all a feller can possibly do. Listen, at some point during the show today, I'm expecting Wendy Lynn to call in. She is the state director for the Ted Cruz campaign here in Michigan. But along the path, what I really want to kick around to did you folks watch the presidential debate last night?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, I got to tell you, of the four debates, it was, at least in my opinion, it was the most presidential of the four debates. Now, the first three, everyone points at CNBC. I have to tell you, I thought all three were horrific. I really did. I thought Fox, and I can't think of the lady's name, but that
Megyn Kelly.
Was Megyn Kelly. I liked her up until then.
Yeah.
And from that debate on, I barely watch her shows now. I thought it was so zany, frankly, in terms of a presidential debate. I was very disappointed. Of course, CNN was right on cue. They did what I expected, but last night I thought Fox Business did a very, very nice job. Jim, did you watch it?
Well, I did, but I agree 100% with your points, and I'd just like to add this: until the absolute embarrassing meltdown on CNBC a couple weeks ago. Apparently, the rules, as understood by the various folks in the media, were this is not a time to ask presidential candidates questions of any substance. This is a time to see if we can get them to make a mistake, to make a gaffe. And thankfully, to Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and some of the others during this disaster at MSNBC or at CNBC. Finally, with Fox last night, and one would hope going on forward, they will ask questions, let the candidates respond, and then we'll get a sense of what's going on, rather than expecting every single one of them to have a photographic memory and never make a stutter or a mistake. That's not even human nature.
It's not. And it's not historically. It's not possible. There's never been a time in history where it was the case. But trying to the first three where they were just trying to cause a mud fight.
Yeah.
Just wasn't presidential, and especially when you contrasted it with how they did the Democratic debate.
Oh, baby, softballs.
It was softballs, but listen, they tried to make that presidential, even if it were softballs, while trying to make the Republican side look like a circus.
And softballs are not bad, because really it isn't about the panel. It is about those candidates, and thankfully it's turned around. I loved Carson's thing. How come you're not asking me about my 10th grade?
Yeah. I thought he did good. Listen, I didn't see any over the top, out of the park hits, and I didn't see anybody really lose anything. Is that kind of what you two saw?
I'd agree with you.
Yeah.
I can't think back right now to like a moment where I'm like, yeah, I remember that. I'm going to bring that up tomorrow morning because
I could go down the list. I thought I'm not a Kasich fan. Now, before I start talking about all these candidates, let me say first, the least of them is 100,000 times better than Hillary Clinton. So whoever wins the Republican nomination is very likely to get my support. I cannot imagine that wouldn't be the case.
I would agree.
And so the very least, I mean, I say that because when we're talking about the show today, if someone hears me saying something negative about a candidate, it's an observation about a particular action or comment. It isn't a critique of that candidate as a person or frankly even as a candidate, just because I think, like I said, the very least of them is that much better than her, and I passionately believe that. With her, I can't fathom the concept of someone sitting and looking at her thinking she's a great president, without reflecting back to Benghazi and the lies and the Clinton era of one big gigantic ugly scene after another. Just not interested. I'm praying that America sees that.
Well, it's up to our Republican candidates to continue to do what they've done in the past, and that is to stand tall when they have opportunities in the media to tell what they believe and not to answer idiotic questions. I mean, what was the question that I saw Jeb Bush was talking about? If you could kill Hitler as a baby, would you do it? Now, folks, that's the kind of question that has a very simple response. And that response from every single candidate ought to be, that's just a dumbass question. Let's move on. Pardon my bottom description of a donkey. But the simple response is, let's get to what these folks believe they're going to do, what they're going to try to achieve when they're president of the United States of America.
Now, but here's the big issue now, and I don't know what the ratings were for last night's debate.
I don't either.
But one of the things that always caused me a pause is if you look at the three debates that I believe were designed like a reality show circus, the ratings were huge. Now, so then when last night's debate was presidential, it was on mark. The questions, for the most part, were reasonable. For the most part, they were things that I think are pertinent to ask someone who's wanting or desirous to be president. But I don't think the ratings were as high, and it causes me to say, I wonder what has America gotten bored with the debates, or is America not interested in honest, straightforward, nuts and bolts?
Well, hold on here. Now, there's a couple things that you got to understand. Number one, yes, they're getting a little bored. I mean, my understanding is that there are expected to be 12 total debates. So
better than 24.
Maybe that's going to get a little boring over time. But this was on Fox Business News. Most people in the United States, probably 95% of the people in the United States do not have access to the Fox Business News channel. Now, they did. I think Fox did. They made some effort. I think a very poor effort to let people know that you could watch the Fox Business News live streaming on the computer. Our sister station, Wood Radio in Grand Rapids, both their AM and FM stations did have it on the radio. Of course, that makes it a little rough since you don't really know who's speaking. There are replays on Fox News online today. You can just click on their link and you'll be able to see a replay. But as great as the debate was, it was a little disappointing that it was on probably, arguably, the least watched news type channel in the entire country.
I got to tell you, I rarely miss the old days when it comes to media, except for all of the debates have been a hassle to watch for most Americans.
Yes.
Purposely.
Well, I don't know if it's purposefully or not, but back in the old days, you had 3 broadcast channels, and that was it, and everyone had one of them because the antenna was high up on top of the tower or the point of the house, and it was very frustrating for me. I don't get Fox Business. By the way, I haven't had CNN on my television in years. I definitely haven't had CNBC on my television in years. So I watched all of the 4 debates so far on my iPad for free, by the way. It isn't the money. To me, a presidential debate is designed for all citizens, and they need to find a format or a forum that everyone can watch. And I passionately believe that.
Well, but you talk about ratings. They're not going to get the ratings on NBC or ABC or CBS, which is why they'd rather show Quantico than a debate.
Yeah, there's logic
or
there.
The AMA Awards, the American Music Awards, are coming up.
I got to tell you, you're probably right. But
unfortunately.
Listen, you're probably right, Matt. But if the AMA Awards are going to outflank a presidential campaign, then we're in some serious trouble.
Well, we are in serious trouble, and that's always the case. And as you said, some old rerun of CSI or NCIS, or you name it, will beat the debates. That's just life. Get over it. We have to get over it. And the reality is that these guys are looking presidential, guys and gal. Fiorina, I thought, was excellent also.
I thought they all were. I'm texting back and forth with an old friend of mine during the debate last night, and I don't remember the point, but along the path there were a couple points that I didn't get, and his response was, "Let me help you. I speak Kardashian."
Would that be like the 1 million people that the Candy Crush met?
Yeah, it must be.
I did like that. Took 75 years for 100 million people or something to be reached with a telephone. And it took 1 day for 100 million to get Candy Crush with some Rubio.
I just think it's a fascinating point. So, Jim, was there anything that really caused you to say I like this person or not? Have you reached a point, by the way, where you're supporting a particular candidate?
You know, I'm sort of settling into a small group, which I'm sure I'm not alone in that. Essentially, the 4, maybe 5 or 6 leaders. I did see some. I didn't see the first the mini debate, but I saw some quotes from Chris Christie that looked to me quite interesting. I do like Cruz and I do like Trump. I could certainly live with Carson or Rubio. I'd like to hear a little more about issues. Usually by now I would be settled. I like the idea that we have more opportunity. Unfortunately, I think we're sitting here with a bunch of political junkies. I think the rest of the country is going to be turning into CSI, and they will miss a lot of it. So, but at some point soon, what really matters is going to be the ability to go out and vote in the primaries.
Are you you say you like Trump?
I do.
Listen,
Yes,
I like the things that he's brought to the arena because I think that they needed to be talked about. Having said that, I don't trust him at all.
Neither do I, and that's an issue.
I put him right in a category with Hillary Clinton in terms of trustworthiness. I really do. If you look at over the course of my political life, I have evolved and come to greater understanding on given issues, and my issue positions have changed a little dinky bit. They're hardly measurable in change, but you do grow. You do learn things. I think that's hopefully human nature. But listen, I can't come from the position of saying I am so pro-abortion, I'll abort anything, and all of a sudden being pro-life. Of course, everyone knows that the show is sponsored by Renegade River. That's a gun shop, by the way. And so
a really good one. You've got your inventory is really taken off.
Oh, I'm having a field day at my new location out in right at the expressway, M104. Right, it's like they built the 231 bypass just for me.
Yeah. If you're coming down, let's talk about that. Take 96, take the 231 exit, and right where it ends.
Yeah, right. It's exit 9.
Right at the exit.
When you're heading out of Muskegon, it's exit 9, and so like I say, it's like they built the 231 for me. But my point is that there's never been a time where I was waffling on my position on guns. I respect people that have different views, by the way. My position has never altered. And by the way, some things when I get into them, like open carry, I get a little bit waffly on that, but my position there has been the same all along. I push back a little bit on that. I know that I may be one of the lone rangers in my shop that feel that way. On the other hand, when we're talking about Trump, this guy's been from the extreme left to now he's a gun lover. And you go, that, the abortion, that, and you gave more money to the Democrats than you did the Republicans. You helped Pelosi become Speaker of the House, for almighty. I like what he's saying. I just don't believe him.
Well, I do believe that a lot of his donations were for business reasons, as he stated.
Wait a minute, man. I get that, but hang on. Let me debate you for just one brief second. He says that, but the left would have you believe that all of the big money in America are right-wing, rich, fat Republicans. Mm-hmm. So what you're kind of telling me is that that's a lie. That most of these Wall Street big junkies who we're talking about are really liberals, and he had to contribute to them to play ball. That's what you're telling me.
Absolutely, and that's the truth. If you do not contribute, as a matter of fact, it's real simple. Take a look at Goldman Sachs or any of the big organizations, ExxonMobil. You will see that they contribute to both sides of the party because they know America has moved into a pay-to-play government. Donald Trump, I think that this one simple fact is a perfect example of what's wrong with America. Not that he's doing it, but that there's no way he would be able to build the buildings and be as successful as he has been if he was purely and objectively non-political. He had to pay, and basically it's a bribe, except it's a legal bribe. He had to contribute to these folks, or he would not get the approvals. We see this time and again.
Look at the states he's dealing with: New York City, New Jersey, and Nevada.
Oh my God!
All 3 Democratic-controlled states. He's got to play ball. I do believe that. Now, I don't trust him 100% either. I like Trump like Jim does, but I also, like you say, how do you go from one extreme to the next?
I can't do that.
But I can
change
when he
a
says
little,
he
but
had to do this for business.
I had to be. Think about what you're saying. This is how I interpret it. Mm-hmm. I had to be uber left pro-abortion. Now, what's to say that maybe he doesn't think he needs to be uber right? I'm pro-life now just to win.
You can't expect a candidate to agree with you 100% on everything.
I'm not asking that. I'm asking for the candidates to be honest.
Yeah, because he has said he's all life.
What you're telling me is that he took those stances because of business. Then I say, okay, I get it. Is he taking these stances because of politics? Who is the real Donald Trump?
Well, that's a legitimate question.
That's just
truth to that.
Listen, and I'm not taking the guy on. I'm not trying to beat him up. But when we go down the roster, that's where I'm at with him. I don't trust him. Now, maybe time will change my mind. I'm not slamming the door in his face, but I'm not feeling the love yet.
Well, didn't the same thing come up with Reagan? That he had to say, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me.
I think
I'm not comparing him to Reagan.
No, and he changed his opinion on many things. He was a union boss.
He was a union boss. But listen now, I'm about as anti-union as you can get. Although I still support Public Act 312, which is the right to negotiate for municipal unionized employees. Some of these things, I support trade unions. I've got a son-in-law that is a plumber. The trade union that he belongs to is not throwing bowling balls through the windows of trucks that are scab labor. They're invested in training people. So there are some areas where we can look at these and be reasonable, and I think Reagan was reasonable. And by the way, I think Trump is reasonable on some of these issues.
Well, we're going to hear more from these folks. They're going to get. I'm positive we're going to get more questions of like you're asking, and frankly, so am I. Of really where these folks stand specifically. There's going to be a weeding out process. What I find interesting is the folks who are looking at the tea leaves and saying, okay, if Jeb drops out, if Kasich drops out, or whomever, where do those votes go? And of course, we can talk forever about this. We'll find out soon. But that's really going to decide things going forward, I believe.
Who do you think is the next one to drop out, guys?
I would think Jeb.
You think Jeb?
Are you talking about the big candidates or the little ones?
Well, the
big guys.
I would say Jindal.
You think Jindal's the next one to fall?
Well, yeah.
I thought he did already.
Yeah, the bottom four, the only one remaining will probably be Chris Christie. But of the big, of the ones, the 5 or 6 or 7 that have got a chance
you really
to do
think
it.
Jeb is going to draw? And what surprises me about that, first off, I don't agree with that, but maybe my reasoning is flawed, but I think he's got a ton of dough. And I think he's extraordinarily well connected with a great ground game, meaning he's got operational representation in all of the states. I think he's in it for the long haul because he can afford to be in it for the long haul, and thinks that as these other people like Chris Christie, when they fall out, some of those numbers are going to go to Jeb Bush. They just are. And now I don't necessarily think he's the greatest debater on the stage level. When I watched him, each of the debates I've watched him in, I thought he was less than impressive, but when I met him in person, he was a completely different person to meet in person.
Well, we can guess what's going on in the future. We just don't know. But some of these folks are going to be dropping out. Some of them soon. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a couple in just within the next week or two.
In the next debate,
and then where will their supporters, those polling numbers go?
I would like to see the next debate have 5 or 6 candidates on the stage.
26 minutes from the time Trump was asked his first question till he got the next question. 26 minutes, and every candidate got one question between that time period. That's too long. You don't get substance out of a candidate.
Yeah, and that's why we have 8 more debates coming. So the good news is that we'll have an opportunity. Those who are interested, and of course, even if you don't listen, you can read the follow-ups and things of that sort. But we will have an opportunity as this field winnows down. And then we're going to have probably a real solid debate among about 4, maybe 5 candidates, and with more time. And for those who are really interested and those who have not made their minds up, that'll be very, very important.
I do think Kasich will be one of the ones that drops out earlier.
Listen, Kasich gets a lot of West Michigan support.
I know.
The speaker, the Senate Majority Leader, Meekoff endorsed him. He's got Pete Hoekstra's support. I don't know if Congressman Huizenga is in his corner or not, but I know a lot of the elected leadership in West Michigan are supporting Kasich. I'm not. That's not where I'm at. I don't dislike him. I think he was a little bit overbearing in the debate last night, more than was called for. And so I look to people that can push their point while maintaining decorum, and I don't think that he met that
No, Cruz and Rubio did really well that way.
I think they were both polite and they delivered strong points.
And they did the same thing he was trying to do, which was get time to rebuttal, but he almost sounded like the whiny junior high kid, and they sounded like the graduate student. You know, they had been there before.
Well, to me, it's going to be very, very key to who's going to be on that stage is, and I don't mean to make this a silly statement, but the folks that drop out, which of the candidates drop out will have a large bearing on which of the candidates gel.
And when they drop out, because they know, but once you get momentum, when people, let's say it's Ted Cruz that starts to get serious momentum, or Rubio, you will then see people think about moving their support, their money, and of course, if they're polled, their preference into those with that momentum. So when they drop out is maybe almost as important as who drops out.
After the debate last night, they did say that they felt Marco Rubio will now be the establishment candidate, that all the support and money is going to go from Bush to him.
Yeah, I read that too.
They thought that he's now the front runner on that side of the party, or whatever they want to call it.
Well, the next debate this seems to change occasionally, but the next debate, interestingly, as Matt, as you suggested, it's in Las Vegas, Nevada, on December 15th.
At Trump Hotel?
Well, it'll be interesting because that's a great question.
A lot of the candidates are going to have their drinks spilled on them, okay?
That is a great question. But it's going to be aired by CNN. So it would be interesting to see if that holds. If there are
News Network, as I affectionately refer
any
to
changes
it.
between now and then.
So if it's at the Trump Hotel, it's convenient that all of the candidates' rooms are right next to the ice machine and elevator?
Yeah, They're not going to get any sleep whatsoever. Very, very nice. Listen, folks, Wendy Lynn Day is on the line with us. Wendy, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show.
Hi, good morning.
Listen, it's really good to have you on. We talked about you up front, and Jim Riley was letting the folks know, actually pretty glowing review of you, I might add.
Good morning. Well, hey, you're one of the movers and shakers in the conservative movement in our state, and you're more than certainly I am. Where I just provide my support with air. You're out there on the ground, actually making things happen. So it's a treat to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you very much. You know, we have a great team in Michigan, and there are so many great folks around the state who every day give their time, talent, and treasure to help restore our country to greatness, actually.
It's a fascinating thing because when I look at the field of candidates one day, I think most of the listeners at least know where my politics is at, and I've opined many times that we're in a fascinating point in American history when quoting a founding father makes you an extremist.
Yeah.
And being fiscally responsible is just as extreme as quoting a founding father. But listen, you're the state director for the Ted Cruz campaign here in Michigan, is that right?
I am. That's right.
That's pretty exciting.
It is very exciting, actually. And like I said, we have an amazing ground game in Michigan. I think we're the only campaign that really has a widespread ground game from Sault Ste. Marie all the way down to Monroe County and over to Hillsdale and Berrien County. So we're doing a great job building this grassroots team.
One of the things that's important for listeners to know is that when you're watching these presidential candidates, I've often referred to these campaigns as being like three-level chess. We see how it looks on a debate, or we see how it looks like in the newspaper, and think that's the campaign. But the reality of it is that there are at least three avenues or levels of this chess game going on. There's the money side, which we're going to touch on in the Enigma report at the top of the show or the end of the show. And the money thing is a big issue. Is which candidates how are they funded? Do they have the wherewithal to stay in? Do they have a steady flow? And then where's that money coming from? But and then the next is, of course, is how is the media treating them? How are they handling the media, for lack of better words? But the biggest thing, the part that's often missed, is do they have a legitimate ground game? And I think what you're getting to, Wendy, is that Ted Cruz has a legitimate ground game.
Yeah, and it's not. It's almost kind of like farming. I mean, it's not very glamorous to be out there and making the phone calls and going to the meetings and talking to volunteers and trying to get people to sign up early, which people don't want to do. You know, conservatives have had their heart broken a few times, and they're leery and they're cynical, and I don't blame them. I am a little leery and cynical too. It's actually quite healthy in politics. But, you know, it's not glamorous to go out there and be trying to build that kind of machine and a grassroots army. And yet we've been doing that in the Cruz campaign for 6-9 months, depending on, you know, where you're talking about. And in Michigan, you know, solidly since May or June, we have been working very hard to build this ground game, and we're kind of we're out there and we're working and we're planting and watering those seeds and doing the hard work that it takes right now, so that, you know, after the first of the year, when we start making phone calls and doing some of the other things that may be a little more visible, people are going to be surprised at how many folks are already with us.
Yeah, when people ask me, "Oh, you're involved in politics?" Yeah, I'm the guy that unstacks the chairs and then restacks them when the meeting's over, because that's, you know, it's really I don't want to say grunt work, but it's that kind of work from volunteers that make these things happen.
It's one of the reasons that we are now at the end, thank God, but the end of a 2-term President Obama. He had a tremendous ground game.
He really did.
He did. And Republicans have, I've been involved in several presidential cycles now, and my first campaign really that I cut my teeth on in terms of presidential politics was Bush 04. And, you know, and typically it seems like Republican campaigns, and maybe even Democrat campaigns, although I've never worked on one, are top down. You know, you kind of wait for the national tell you what to do, and you wait for the state to tell you what to do, and then you kind of go out and just take the list and make phone calls. And it's all very, you know, it's just the way you do it. Well,
kind of two-dimensional.
It is. And what we've seen in the Cruz campaign is that it's much more organic, which makes it a little bit scary for some folks, because it is organic. It is going to take on a life of its own. Senator Cruz called it, when he was in Mackinac, he called it campaign entrepreneurs. And we have those popping up all over the country who are designing things. And we have a volunteer who's, you know, putting out these Christmas yard signs in Michigan that are phenomenal for Senator Cruz. And we have, you know, people who created their own buttons and other and flyers for the Hunger Games and other things that are just amazing. And all that's happening because people really are taking ownership of the campaign. That's what President Obama had, and I think that's what we have. That's different than the traditional way that campaigns are run.
You know, when I just look at the candidates in general, especially when I compare it to the Democratic lineup, if I'm going by memory, but I think Senator Cruz is 44. And when I compare that, we always hear, you know, progressive on the left side there. You know, progressive is we're looking towards the future. And I look at their candidate lineup and I say, really, that's looking towards the future? Honest. All of the folks that are on their side running for president are the exact people, not like close to or near, they're the exact people that attacked Ronald Reagan for his age. Mm-hmm. And you go, no kidding. This is, and so we hear the term lately, you know, there's nobody on their bench. But you know what? There isn't anybody on their bench. And
their bench is like on the wrong bus. You know, it's heading in the wrong direction. No one wants to be on it.
Well, you know, there's some talk, and I think this is excellent. I'd like to hear more of this, but that this is not so much a Reagan comparison as it is a bright, intelligent, energetic Jack Kennedy having a debate with old, tired, black and white Dick Nixon with Hillary Clinton as the old,
Jim.
Black and white, tired, oh, God, it's finally going to be my time. And I'll tell you, when you get the young, be it Cruz or Rubio or darn near anyone in that group, the comparison is clear.
It's very stark differences.
It is. And I think that, you know, the Democrat Party is the leadership, you know, has veered so much to the left. And there's a lot of people that vote Democrat for a variety of reasons. And many of them are actually quite conservative when you talk to them about the issues. Mm-hmm. Like I said, they just vote Democrat for a variety of reasons. And what I've been finding with my Democrat friends and watching kind of their reactions to the debates is, you know, I wish, you know, Webb would have done better in those debates. I wish he would have gotten some traction, because Webb he's much more in line with what my Democrat friends, what they talk about when they talk about values. But when you look at the political elite in New York and Washington and LA, those Democrat political elite, they're socialists, and they don't want somebody like Webb. They want someone like a Clinton or Bernie Sanders. And
we did an episode. Wendy, we did an episode of this show. That's been a few months now, but it was we talked about John F. Kennedy, and in fact, I literally had Googled up a lot of his campaign slogans and the general theme of his candidacy. They would laugh him off the stage on the Democratic side now. He is by modern terms, he's a moderate Republican.
Oh yeah, absolutely, a reasonable moderate Republican. And,
yep.
Yeah, which some of them aren't, but yeah, absolutely. And I think so. I think the whole country is kind of in this quandary. And in today's Veterans Day, and I'm the wife and the mother of soldiers. My husband and my son both serve. My son's deployed right now. And I woke up this morning and I was kind of melancholy, thinking about our country and about, those who've served and died and fought for our freedoms and what that means. And, the candidates are all talking about reforming the VA. And I said, no, I started thinking, I'm like, that's important. That's an obvious, that's low-hanging fruit, if you will, corporate speak. But the real issue to me is that we have many of our fundamental rights that we take for granted are being protected by a 5-4 Supreme Court decision right now. And the next president is going to appoint 1 to 3 Supreme Court justices, depending on how long they're in there and what happens with the Supreme Court justices. That means that basic freedoms that we take for granted, religious liberty, Second Amendment, even freedom of speech, which we see is under attack across the country, that's what's on the line this election. Because we know that Congress won't hold the Supreme Court accountable. So to me, today I'm having a hard time stomaching, and I love my friends and family, but once you're voting for someone because they're a woman, or someone because they're a nice guy, or someone because of all these reasons, and I'm like, okay, but don't you get it? Don't you get that if you put Happy Veterans Day on your Facebook page, but if you vote for someone who doesn't get it and doesn't have the skills and ability to walk in there day one and handle it and hit the ground running, and when it comes time to appoint a Supreme Court justice who's not afraid from the fight to appoint someone who we know is going to stand for the constitutional authority. If we don't do that, that's the greatest insult to our veterans that I can imagine, and to those who have lost their heroes. That
Amen
I can imagine.
Amen to that.
And it's so today I just feel really passionate about that. And I, like I said, maybe it's because it's Veterans Day. My son's gone, and I'm hoping he'll be home for Christmas, but we'll see. And I just so for me, it's personal. It isn't about political, politics as usual. It's personal.
I can tell you this, Wendy. I'm 54, getting ready to go double nickels here in a couple months. And America has changed dramatically in my lifetime. And, of course, a lot of us conservatives are reflecting back to Ronald Reagan's bold colors, not pale pastels speech. And listen, I think I'll give kudos to President Obama for a moment. In my view, he has been more fundamentally transforming of America. I don't agree with any of it, by the way, but he's been more fundamentally transforming than any president since FDR. And I fear for my granddaughter's future. I literally do.
Yeah.
And all of the cliches that are always bantered around in the political thing when it serves the left. For instance, we listened for years about whether G.W. Bush was stupid or poorly educated. And while you're talking, I'm looking at Ted Cruz's education background. Holy mackerel. I don't know how he was able to stay constitutional through all of this indoctrination he went through, but Princeton, Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs,
And he didn't go to Princeton. I think it's important for people to understand he wasn't born with a silver spoon. I mean, he was born from immigrant parents who worked really hard. His mother was a computer programmer, was the first person in her family to go to college. And he just recently, a few years ago, paid off his student loans. I mean, he did it the right way. He did it the hard way. He took out loans to go to school, just like so many of us, but he has a financial house in order, and he's worked really hard to build his own life.
I always pronounce this wrong, but how do you say? Is it cum laude?
Cum laude, yeah.
Yes, cum laude.
And he does that, and he graduated from Princeton cum laude, and ends his educational career after going through the list that I want from Harvard. Listen, folks, he paid for it himself. Just what Wendy is saying. This isn't a guy that scribbled a reader out of the family trust.
I want to jump in here, though. I think his story is compelling. There are others currently running and losers, sadly, in the elections in the past who had compelling stories. What Cruz brings to the table is somewhat similar to what Trump brings to the table, and that is he understands, which clearly Jeb Bush and Kasich do not. He understands that his enemy in this election is not the Democrats, because there are always going to be two sides. There's nothing wrong with that. We enjoy that. He understands that the enemy of the conservatives, of the Republicans in this election, is the media. And you cannot win if you're going to allow the media to dictate the ridiculous questions and spend their entire time on minutia, and he fights back. What we need, and have not seen probably really since Ronald Reagan, is someone with the spine and the verbal skills and the acute, fast mind to get back at those in the media who clearly, we know the statistics are absolutely open, clear, and undeniable. Mm-hmm. They are hardcore liberals who absolutely loathe the Republican candidates that they're speaking to. And I would just add this, that last night, and you may remember the governor of Texas, whose name escapes me right now, who ran briefly and forgot.
Rick Perry.
Rick Perry. He forgot one of the departments that he was going to eliminate, and that essentially ended his career. Well, last night, Ted Cruz made a minor stumble, and guess what? It didn't end his campaign. And that's the key. We need someone with spine and brains and guts to take on those who would absolutely just, they wake up every morning looking to destroy them.
He hit the media with a real zinger last night.
Yes, he did.
He didn't give him a chance. He just said,
yes.
I really mean it. The Department of Commerce is awful. He understands, because of his debate experience and because he's extremely intelligent, and logic. My kids took a logic class when I was homeschooling them, and that class really taught them a lot about the premise of a question. And I think that's what Cruz understands, is he does not, it's interviewing 101, but it's also logic and debate. It's the premise of a question that you do not have to accept that premise.
Yes.
And he's extremely good at spinning it around. I remember, I think it was Reagan, and I won't quote this exactly, but he went out to a press conference and said, "So what questions would you like to ask so I can tell you what I want you to know?" And that's kind of what Senator Cruz does when he's engaged with the media. And he's also, I see him as kind of a sheepdog. There's sheep, there's wolves, and there's sheepdog. And I don't think, this isn't a derogatory use of the word sheep. It's just an analogy of, sheep, we're going around our lives. We're just trying to keep food on the table and get our kids to college and take care of our aging parents and make ends meet. And we're just living our lives. But out there are these wolves. And I think the enemy is not only the media, but it's also the political elite in both parties.
Yes.
And those are the wolves who are at the door, who want what we have, and they're going to do anything they can to take it and keep their power. And then you have the sheepdog. And the sheep don't really love the sheepdog. It's kind of annoying, and he barks really loud. But when that wolf comes a knocking, everyone's happy that the sheepdog is there. And I think you saw when Senator Cruz stood up in the media and took on in the debate, the last debate, not this one last night, and took on the media, you saw a sheepdog who came to the defense of his fellow candidates. And he will be a sheepdog for our country, for our families, and for our military, and for our Constitution, frankly. When those wolves come and knock it and want to attack it and steal it.
I love your analogy.
Absolutely.
That is great.
Well, I didn't make it up, so but it is a good one. I love it too.
Let's repeat it. You bet.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a very good one. It's point on. One of the words I hear you say a few times in there, though, is the Constitution, and it sometimes feel like America's divided now, and the one half, plus or minus, wants to keep and revere that Constitution, and the other half wants to call it old school and put it in a closet somewhere and forget it. And the problem, to me, it's like having a company with bylaws. You have bylaws so that when you have a problem, you have a roadmap of how to deal with the problem. And the idea of setting it aside is fearsome to me. And the idea that that Senator Cruz is standing up for it is very important.
Well, and I think that the Constitution, it's not, because if you look at it just like a piece of paper or like a list of rules that are hung up in a classroom, then I can understand why people they don't think it carries that weight. But and that's because most people in America don't know American history anymore. They don't know what that Constitution cost. No. They don't know that it's soaked in the blood of men and women who fought and died for it. They don't know about Black Robe Regiment. They don't know about the signers who sacrificed so much. They have no idea. And so to them, it is just a piece of paper and a list of rules. But to those who understand American history, who know it, who've studied it, and especially for those who continue to be involved in the contemplation of it and through service, through military or through civil service, it is something different to us. If it's a living, breathing document, it's living and breathing with those who fought to not only establish that Constitution, but also to protect it all these years. So I think that's the difference. And how do we do that? I also think that sometimes as conservatives, we have a habit of beating people over the head with our pocket Constitution, and I've taken on a strategy of political evangelism and meeting people where they're at, because we throw around terms like Constitution, and most people doesn't mean anything to them. They want to know what that means to them at the kitchen table. They want to know what that means to them in their own lives, in their own home. And we don't traditionally do a good job of connecting those, like making a bridge to that. And I think we're seeing some good examples of Cruz and even Rubio of doing a better job of starting to take those ideas, those theoretical ideas, and bringing them right down to ground level. And I think that's really important.
The contrast between Ted Cruz and Hillary Clinton is stark. One of the comments he made yesterday evening, when we talk about the cronyism of Washington, Hillary Clinton embodies the cronyism of Washington. And she really does.
Great phrase.
And listen, if you look at the definition of liberal, there's nothing liberal about her. That's fascism. And that's really the foundation of what we're talking about. There's no liberal there. Liberty to me, or liberal, those words work together. It's freedom from government, while she's calling for more of it. And you go, wait a minute, stop. That's not what those words mean. And it's important to use words you're trying to communicate ideas. And what she's doing is she's communicating a lie. To me, the contrast is stark. And I would love to see a debate between the two.
Well, and I think, to me, Hillary Clinton, no matter who gets the nomination, and I sure hope it's Cruz, I will do everything in my power. Because let me backpedal. So I hope it's Cruz, because I know that there are other candidates that could get the nomination that may not make that won't save our country. You know what I mean? That won't. I mean, they just won't. It's not their thing on the Republican ticket. But I also know that Hillary Clinton has already told us that she will let our soldiers be left behind and killed. Like, she's already told us that. She's already demonstrated it, and she'll lie about it. But I do not trust her with my husband and my son. I do not trust her with the health and safety of our military at all. I know she's already proven that she's not trustworthy. I wouldn't trust her with my cat.
When the
phone, I don't trust her with,
when the phone rings at 3 a.m., we have no idea where President Obama was, but we do know a little bit of snippet from what her actions were, and they were nothing. 600 emails requesting support were either ignored or denied. She is not a commander-in-chief. It's just that simple.
And then more egregiously, she lied.
Yeah.
My job before was working with families of soldiers who have died. And I sat in the living rooms and talked to these mothers and looked at folded flags and been to funerals and looked at baby pictures and cried with them. And they struggle for so long. They never get over it. And for her to sit there and lie to a mother who just lost her son.
With the caskets in the hangar,
yes,
while she's looking them in the eye,
that's right,
and lying, is
that's
about
right,
as cold as any human could ever possibly be.
Cold so calculated. And if she'll lie in that moment, if she will look a grieving mother with her son's casket with an American folded flag on it right in front of her, and she'll look at that folded flag on that flag draped casket, and she'll look at that mother with tears running down her face, and she'll maybe hold her hand and look her in the eyes and lean in and tell a bold-faced, destructive lie. If she's willing to do that, she's willing to do anything, if it serves her well. And for me, that's reason enough. We must defeat her.
Absolutely. Wendy, we're almost out of time. Before we run out with you, I want to make a statement myself, and that myself on a personal level, I'm endorsing Ted Cruz for president.
Awesome.
And as you go forward, if I can help you on a personal level, if I can help at all with the campaign, please reach out to me.
Wonderful. Well, and people can go to tedcruz.org to sign up, and so can you. And we're so glad that you joined the team. We have a great team in Michigan. We're having a lot of fun. And again, tedcruz.org. This is a serious time, and there's serious issues, but we can have fun while we're saving our country, and we are. So join us, and we'd love to have you.
Amen. Wendy Lynn Day, please keep up the great work in helping to move America and Michigan forward.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yep, bye-bye now. Folks,
Bye.
We'll be back in just a minute with an abbreviated Enigma report.
And now back to the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com and your host, Mike Hewitt.
Listen, folks, we babbled on so much in that monster-sized first segment. We had to do double sponsor commercials, and now we've used up most of our time for the Enigma Report. What the Enigma Report was going to be about is money and politics and how to get it out. So next week's Enigma Report, I can tell you right now, will be about money and politics, because I guarantee you it will still be a problem. And there are some things I don't understand about it. I remember Ronald Reagan was interviewed by Johnny Carson back when he was a governor, and Carson said, what are we going to do about money and politics? And Reagan said, the answer to it is to make the campaigns shorter. And so what we've done is we've doubled the length of the candidacies since then. So I think we did exactly the opposite of what Reagan suggested, and it's had exactly the opposite effect. At least that's my view of it. Listen, I think we're down to 30 seconds, folks, so here's what I want to see you do. For some reason, and I'm loving it, the Facebook page for the Mike Hewitt Show is growing suddenly in the last little bit. So find us at / the Mike Hewitt Show, or see me on Twitter at Talk Mike Hewitt. We'll see you next week. Have a great week in between.